Hi, everybody. We are live. I am Elizabeth Matherne from Cook Baxter's South Georgia office. I am joining you today to give you an update on everything that's going on in the immigration world and answer your questions live. So we will give people a few seconds to join and see what kind of questions we have today. Today, I plan to be touching on a few things like the latest update on Build Back Better, which we all know is kind of old news at this point. It's dead for the year. And just other stuff like what's going on with travel restrictions, what's going on with the waiver of in-person interviews for certain non-immigrant visas. I will also talk a little bit about, let's see, passport fees are going up. I imagine all fees are going to go up. Temporary restrictions between US and Canada and Mexico are going to be lifted. The country bans for Africa are supposed to be lifted. Haitian migrants have filed a lawsuit against CBP for treatment. If you haven't heard about the way the administration is treating Haitian immigrants in particular, with mass deportations, I think I read 150,000 Haitians have been physically removed from the United States without, credible fear interviews and things like that. So there is a very unfortunate treatment of Haitian immigrants at this point that isn't catching a lot of traction on the news, but I have been seeing some of that information. So we can talk about all of that. We can also answer your questions live. If you're just joining us, my name is Elizabeth Matherne from Cook Baxter South Georgia office. I am located in Adel, Georgia, which is halfway between Tifton and Valdosta, right off I-75. We are only about 30 to 40 miles from the Florida border. So we also serve surrounding areas, all of South Georgia, all of the country. But if you want to drive by and see us, pretty much in driving distance of all of South Georgia and North Florida. So I'm happy to be here with you guys today. I was out last Thursday, and I think the Thursday before, I got a little time out of the office. So I'm really glad to be back with you. And let's start with going over today's immigration news. Okay, so, and I'll be on the lookout for questions. Feel free to post where you're watching from. Hello, I love those. And any questions that you may have. Okay, so the State Department announced that they were going to waive interviews. Hi, Glenn. Happy holidays. Hi, Alex. Happy holidays. Okay, Glenn has a question. I filed for the LC approval, labor certification, in May 2020. I got audited. Do you think as of right now, if the status quo, my processing time will be greater than 1 year? How can I make that faster? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, Glenn. With an audit may slow your time down. So that's a good question. All right, let's see. Oh, thank you so much, guys, for chiming in and saying where you are. So hi, Alex and Dimitriana Anderson. Hi, thank you for watching from Atlanta. I am from Atlanta. And Donald, hi. Happy holidays. Happy New Year's, everyone. I hope everybody had a great holiday and are doing well out there. I know that this has been a tough year for a lot of people, and we are looking forward to January 2022 next week with the hopes that we may see some shifts towards the better in some of these things that have been influencing a lot of our lives. Unfortunately, Build Back Better is not necessarily happening this year. So maybe next year, but it seems like it's pretty much dead in the water. Will the Democrats be able to pull something together to pass? I don't know. At this point, I feel like my personal opinion is they've lost momentum and lost some of that capital, political capital that they could have used to push this through. And they are now shifting the conversation to voting rights. So now, a lot of immigration advocates are saying that there is no need for them to create legislation or laws surrounding a parole program. The parole is already in the law, and that the president could, in theory, decide how that parole could be enforced or given out. So maybe that will be something that the Democrats or Biden could do in and of himself without trying to legislate. Okay, Roberto. Okay, Roberto's asking, what is, happy holidays. Hi, happy holidays. What is a VAWA case? Okay, that's a little off topic, but it's a great question. So I'll deviate from my original plan of the things I was going to update you guys on. Take a minute to talk about VAWA. Very, very important topic, very important case type. Many people don't know about it. It is Violence Against Women Act, but unlike the title of the application or type of relief, it is not only for women. It is also available to men. It is also not related to necessarily gender identity or type of relationship, right? So it must be married. There must be a marriage, or if the person thought that a polygamous marriage was valid. So that's also something you don't see a lot, but there is some very interesting information in the statutory notes about when VAWA passed and what they were thinking regarding that. So if a person is married to a U.S. citizen and or is the child who is abused, neglected, or abused, I was going to say abused, neglected, or abandoned, but that's special immigrant juvenile petition. So a person who's subject to cruel and unusual treatment, like can be emotional, verbal abuse, but also physical abuse, right? So that person who has been abused or has witnessed their child being abused by a U.S. citizen or a lawful permanent resident can self-petition for their residency. So a lot of times, a residency application can depend on like how you entered the U.S., whether you entered with a visa or not, and relies on a person to file a petition for the intending immigrant. VAWA creates some avenues around those things. So you don't need a person to petition for you. You can self-petition. You still have to prove that the relationship was bona fide, and meaning that it was like a good faith, real marriage or relationship. And how you entered doesn't matter, because you can waive, as part of the VAWA application, waive entry without inspection. You can also waive some types of criminal convictions, or even what you may have heard of is the permanent bar. You can even attempt to waive the permanent bar, which is, some people call it multiple entries bar. If the multiple entries that created the permanent bar were related to the abuse. Sometimes what I've seen is perhaps like an abused spouse is allowed to return home to their home country, maybe to attend like a funeral. One of their parents passes away, or their parents is on their deathbed or something. But the abuser keeps the children and uses the children as a way to force the abuse survivor back into the household. That would be an example of how like abuse and the multiple entries, like overstaying, leaving, coming back, would be potentially waivable under a VAWA. So And then, of course, like criminal waivers is somewhat expansive. If you can show that the criminal history was related to abuse, you might be able to get some waivers that you wouldn't otherwise get. So VAWA is a great application. Another question that people always generally ask me related to VAWA is, does the abuser, number one, does the abuser have to know? Will it hurt them? Will they get arrested? Those are sort of questions that people ask. No, it is done in what's basically secret processing. And I have never seen a VAWA application result in charges being filed, because they're different worlds. And what you're sending to USCIS is somewhat confidential. They have officers that are specially trained to evaluate these types of cases in a service center that is exclusively dedicated to these types of cases. So that's a good thing. Another thing about VAWA that people sometimes don't know is you don't need a sponsor. And you can waive the I-864 affidavit requirement as part of filing for a VAWA. And then, of course, one of the things to watch out for is if you are divorced if you're a married person filing on that basis and you are divorced from the lawful permanent resident or the U.S. citizen, there is a firm 2-year deadline. You must file for the VAWA before the 2 years from the date of the divorce. Now, if you are in removal proceedings, remember that there is a special cancellation based on VAWA, and the divorce date cutoff is not a bar in the removal proceedings application. So if you lost your opportunity to file for the VAWA affirmatively, you can potentially file for it defensively. Another great thing about that application in the removal proceedings context is you've only got a 3-year good moral character and physical presence requirement. So it's available for people who have been here for a much shorter period of time. A lot of practitioners forget that and think that cancellation of removal is always a 10-year physical presence requirement, which you may have heard of that application being called the 10-year application or the 10-year rule or something like that. Under the special cancellation, which is related to VAWA, it's a 3-year. So there's some good insight on VAWA. I could talk a lot about that. It is a good application to help a lot of vulnerable people. If you think that you may be eligible for VAWA, even if what you have been through you might not consider it bad abuse, it's worth Googling the power and control wheel, looking at some of the things that are considered abusive behavior, legitimate abusive behavior, and understanding that, abuse comes in all forms, and especially between a foreign national and someone with status. There's also a power dynamic that creates some space for potential abuse. So if you think that may be something that you qualify for, a consultation with an immigration attorney is confidential, especially if you go by yourself, right? And you discuss these things with an immigration attorney. That might be something that can be taken care of confidentially. Another misnomer, real quick, and then I'll move on, is people think you must have had police reports filed to document the abuse. That is not a statutory requirement to file a VAWA. Many people think that that's a requirement. It is not. Does it make your case stronger if you reported the abuse to the police and the person was convicted? Potentially, because it's a third-party documentary evidence, but it doesn't mean necessarily that you cannot file a VAWA if you've never reported the abuse to the police, or if the person has never been convicted of a crime. So a lot of people think that's a requirement, and it's not. Okay, let me move on. I got a few other questions here. And thank you so much, Roberto, for asking about VAWA. It's a great thing that a lot of people need to know about. And remember, it's not just for women. Okay, any news on the EAD lawsuit? No news yet. It's my understanding it's still pending. And the DV 2020, no news on that either. Mohammed, thank you so much for your question. And Sidhesh, thank you for your question. And Mohammed, you are very welcome. Thank you. Thank you for the applause. Appreciate it very much. You guys are great, 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 great. I love spending time with you and answering your questions. So let's see. Cindy's got a question. What's going on with DACA? Nothing super new on DACA. It's still where it is. We really thought with Build Back Better, potentially we were going to move past the DACA lawsuit, but without any sort of formalized legislation, we're still in the same place. So where DACA is, a recap in case you just don't know what's going on. They are accepting initial applications, but they are not adjudicating them. They are adjudicating renewals, and they are adjudicating advance parole. If you have DACA, you have not done an advance parole, you should do that. Advance parole, especially if you entered without proof or a visa or permission or inspection when you originally entered the country. If you enter with advance parole, which is a permission to travel, you re-enter with advance parole, that can put you in a much better position to adjust your status, maybe based on marriage to a U.S. citizen or something like that, okay? So an advance parole is a fairly inexpensive application to file for at this point. Okay, Cindy's also asking, what about the immigration plan? So that's what I was talking about regarding the Build Back Better. While I was out of the office, I guess that was about 2 weeks ago now at this point, Joe Manchin, Senator Manchin from West Virginia, said that he was no longer going to support the bill. He was not going to vote. He was not going to vote yes, no matter what. That unfortunately was the vote that the Democrats needed, and he knew that. So it's really disappointing political decision that he made at this point. Oh, also, the parliamentarian rejected Plan C, which was another huge blow to the immigration stuff that was in Build Back Better. So I guess the good news from the story is that we didn't have a vote on Build Back Better without the immigration stuff included. Potentially something can still be included at this point and they can vote on it. So we'll just have to see next year what happens, right? I am not super hopeful anymore. I was really hopeful. I was maintaining the hope, but at this point, I don't see the strategy behind them actually passing the immigration portion. I think it's maybe going to have to be through some sort of, I don't want to say executive action, but because that's not the right term for it, but through some sort of like policy execution that the president does to maybe help people. The Mohammed, what about Build Back Better? I was just talking about Build Back Better. Oh, in Congress, diversity visa. None of the immigration stuff made it past the parliamentarian. So I don't know, Mohammed. Okay, and Patricio is asking, how long does it take to get a student visa? I don't know the answer to that right off the top of my head. You can always go onto the USCIS case processing timelines and put in, like, you select the different types of applications, and you can see what USCIS is reporting is the it's not the average, it's like the mean or something. So it's the window of time that most applications are being processed. Most applications of that type are being processed. But of course, that's what's being reported by the government. So, I mean, I guess you can trust those numbers, but you have to realize that that's not like indicative of every single application. Some may take longer and some may move faster. So, not a great answer to your question. Most student visas, I think, get processed by schools. So I don't do those very frequently. All right, let's see. Bak Bakhtiar. Sorry if I didn't pronounce your name properly. No updates on DV 2020 from me. Ed, you're asking, okay, Ed, you've got a couple of questions here. How do I get a no record letter from OBIM FOIA for a client that was arrested at the border? In this case, they say that there is no record, but there should be an arrest from 2005. Okay, so it sounds like maybe you already did an OBIM FOIA. OBIM is Office of Biometrics, for people who don't know. I don't know what all the letters stand for, but it's a biometrics FOIA. I'm not maybe you already did the FOIA. I guess you're asking for like alternative ways to hunt down criminal records. Okay, if there's an arrest from 2005, well, first of all, if you're trying to figure out criminal history, supposed to have, okay. All right, I'm going to try to answer your question as best as I can, okay? Just in general terms. An FBI fingerprint report would be the next thing I would do. I would also, if you know who the arresting agency was, you can contact them. The police department's records department, and ask them to research the arrest. And what happens sometimes is that someone can be arrested, but no charges are, oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, Ed's saying that he's asking about at the border. Oh, so you're talking about that a person was stopped at the border by CBP or something. Okay, sometimes they don't fingerprint. So I think you probably need to do a CBP FOIA along with the OBIM. And then, you know, maybe even an FBI report as well. Sometimes a immigration interaction can show up on an FBI report. So I guess what you're trying to piece together, what all is out there. So I don't know. I think that's the best I can give you. If you don't know how to file an OBIM FOIA or an FBI report or a CBP FOIA, you can figure those out through Google. It's pretty straightforward. Okay. I hope that was helpful, Ed. All right. Cindy is saying, right. The FBI shows the arrest. Yeah. So, I mean, maybe if you haven't done the CBP, you need to do that. And FBI report should show the arresting agency, which should be Border Protection. I always want to call it Border Patrol, but I don't think it's actually Border Patrol. I think it's Border Protection. If it wasn't them, if it was somebody else, you may have to hunt down records through the arresting agency and see how that arrest was cleared. It might have been thrown out and nothing happened. So I don't know. And especially if it was a Mexican national, they may have just been turned around at the border, which is interesting. Okay, you're very welcome. All right, so Cindy, I have my grandma in Mexico. Could she apply for a visit to me? So anybody can apply for a visitor visa. Visitor visas are highly discretionary. Generally, if a person is older, has property, has business, doesn't necessarily have people in the U.S. that are going to petition for them, doesn't have real medical conditions, then potentially they could be issued a visitor visa, but they're so highly discretionary. It's hard for me to even advise you on what would be granted. But sure, she can. She would also have not had or doesn't have any bars to admissibility, like, having been here before within 10 years without permission and overstaying or something like that, or having been previously like not truthful on a previous application. So, there's stuff that they could say of why a person might not get a visitor visa granted, but it's usually related to whether or not they believe the person intends to immigrate or not. So that's why we talk about like property ownership and who all do they, like a job and stuff that they have in the home country. So, but still, they're hard. They're hard to get. All right. Mohammed's asking, is the KCC open this week? I'm not sure. I mean, if I had to guess, yes, they were open earlier this week, maybe even today, but they probably won't be open tomorrow. Next week, though, everything should be back rolling. I mean, the holidays are almost over. So, sorry, Mohammed, I don't have an inside track on whether KCC is, like what they're doing right now, but I'm pretty sure they should be open like this. There's no federal holiday. Okay, you're very welcome, Cindy. Thank you so much for joining and asking a question. Patricia, okay, thank you for answering my question. If you study a nursing program in the US, is there any chance to change status if you get hired? You're welcome, Mohammed. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining and asking questions. Patricia, yes. Yes, you totally potentially can. That is a great question. And I'm not super familiar with like nursing work visas, but I know that is something that exists. So definitely, and then part of your nursing program should contain like an OPT, an occupational period of work that you could use to work and potentially get hired in your profession. So yeah, that sounds great. I think, thank you. If you're in nursing school and you are willing to do that work, thank you so much. This is really, really an important field, and we're so grateful for so many people, especially immigrants, who help keep the healthcare field running. So, and at a high quality level. So thank you, Patricia. If you're in nursing school, that's amazing. Speaking of different non-immigrant visas, let me just give you one of the quick updates. We don't have but a few minutes left. One of the quick updates that I wanted to tell you guys about is the State Department expanded the waivers of in-person interviews for certain types of non-immigrant visa applicants. So it includes H1s, H3s, H4s, Ls, O, P, Q. It's like alphabet soup. Who meet certain conditions. You have to be applying for the visa in the home country of the person's residence or nationality. And then certain other conditions may apply. Now, they have also extended a previously approved policy to waive interviews for students, professors, research scholars, short-term scholars, specialists, including F, M, and J visa applicants through the end of 2022. Also, right. I know that we talked about a few weeks back about the H2 visas. There was a formal extension of the waiver of in-person interviews through December of next year, which is 2022, waiving the in-person interviews for H2 visas and then F, M, and J, which I just mentioned. So That is good news for a lot of people. That may clear out some backlog. That may speed some things up, and we are excited about that. The country ban on South Africa, Botswana, Eswatini, Lesotho, Malawi, Mozambique, Namibia, and Zimbabwe lifted. Okay, you just have to meet the same requirements as everybody else traveling to the United States, which is be fully vaccinated and a negative COVID test within 1 day of the departure. Good. That actually makes sense. I'm glad that the Biden administration is doing a few things that are in line with what seems like common sense in our immigration system. So that is, I mean, there's other little updates, but nothing earth-shattering. And if you don't already subscribe to our newsletter, that's a great place to get our updates. That's weekly newsletter it's through email, and you can go to our website and subscribe to our newsletter. It's a great way to keep up, just in case you prefer to read things in detail and have all those links and stuff there handy for you. You know that if you prefer Facebook, we do Facebook Lives almost every day at 2 p.m. To give you the latest updates on the immigration world, and answer your questions. Mr. Cook usually does his impact litigation updates. I think on Monday evenings, Mr. Cook does the Facebook Live for Cook Baxter on Wednesday. That's where you're going to find most of your litigation updates and etc. So stay tuned. We will keep watching for any changes in legislation, policy, case law-wise, and otherwise, okay? I really enjoyed being with you guys today. Thanks for all the great questions. Thanks for joining. Thanks for watching. I will see you next Thursday. All right, take care, everybody. Happy New Year. I hope it's a great one. Bye-bye.